are going to lump the G5 conferences together and give you a top 5 list. Garrett, I'm going to go through these 1 through 5 here really quickly, and then we can, just rapid fire some takes off of them. We've got Frank Harris at UTSA, number 1. My dude, my man crush, Grayson McCall at Coastal Carolina, surprisingly stayed at Coastal Carolina. That was not a given that he was going to stay. I'm really excited to see what he can do with an interesting offensive change this year without Jamie Chadwell. At number 2, Grayson McCall. Michael Pratt at Tulane, another guy that I just, fell in love with watching live last year at the Cotton Bowl. Austin Reed at number 4, who led FBS in passing last year at Western Kentucky. And a newcomer that we are kind of going out on a limb here, but both of us are really, really high on coming into this year is Preston Stone at SMU. And if you haven't heard the name yet, remember that name, because I think by the end of the year that we're all going to know exactly who Preston Stone is in the college football universe. So Garrett, I'll just let you take the lead here. Who do you want to go with?
Oh, I'm going to start at the top. Frank Harris is as good as they come at the quarterback spot. If you ask me to make a top 5 quarterbacks in the country, Frank Harris probably ends up on my list. He is extremely talented. Over 4,000 yards passing this last year on almost 70% completions, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and was a real factor in the run game as well. 602 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. An absolute athlete. And it seems like he just kind of willed his team to victory in the vast majority of the spots that he found them in. Played well against I think, improved Texas defense, and it did not end up winning that game. But still passed for almost 70%, 222 yards. Played fairly well. They did lose their bowl game to Troy, so, maybe a little bit of a blemish. Didn't necessarily
Another
play.
sloppy weather game. I
Yeah,
remember
that
watching
did.
that. I put a couple shekels on UTSA in that game, and I was not happy with
Not
that
too good,
outcome. I
though.
remember watching it and just being
Yeah.
disgusted
Well,
with the
and
weather.
to the point, Troy had a very good defense
They
last year,
did.
so can't
Yeah.
necessarily knock him for not playing well against one of the better defenses in the country last year. But yeah, I just think when you look at Frank Harris, he's about as good as they come. I think you're hard pressed to find a guy who means as much to his team as Frank Harris does. Losing some really talented wide receiver help, but there's still some good wide receivers on that team, and I think that they're going to be just fine as they make their transition to the AAC to go join some of these other guys on this list.
Yeah, if you look at pre-season all conference listings for the American, it's littered with UTSA guys. A lot of people think
Yeah,
that UTSA is going to come in and make a lot of noise because of Frank Harris. I'm really interested to see Grayson McCall, like I said, without the Jamie Chadwell offense. I think that if he can show that he can put up, I don't think he's going to put up as big numbers as he has in the past because they are absolutely insane what he's been able to do in that offense. But if he can put up just remotely similar numbers and show that he's still taking care of the football in his final season, I think that he's going to be a second or third round draft pick next year in the NFL draft, if not even higher. I think I could see someone at the back end of the first round taking a chance on him if he shows he's not just a product of an offensive system. Michael Pratt, man, I kind of stood my
yeah.
ground to put him at number 3. And we talk about Tulane last year. I think that if anyone's going to knock UTSA off, I think that Tulane and UTSA are really on a collision course for the American Conference Championship this year.
Yeah.
Michael Pratt, I think, we joked off camera, but I think he was like, what, 7 of 16 or something like that in the
Yeah,
Cotton
8 for
Bowl.
17 in the Cotton Bowl,
It was the
less than
gutsiest
50%.
8 of 17 that I've ever seen. Just
Well, he
like,
had 15 rushes for 83 as well, so that's not too
yes, he
bad. He did
did.
score 2 touchdowns through the air. There's that one really long one, but, kind of ignore that for a second, but
It was the
not a bad
Tyjae Spears
performance.
show. For the most part,
Yeah,
most of that game was the Tyjae Spears show for Tulane, but he put his team on the back in the fourth quarter and just really, really impressed the heck out of me. It was gutsy, and I think that he is everything that a G5 program should want in a quarterback. Whether or not that has
yeah,
pro aspirations, I don't know, but a lot to be excited about. Austin Reed, it might be disrespectful to put the reigning FBS passing yards leader at number 4 on this list, but to me, that's more of a product of thinking. I don't know. I think if you put any of the 3 guys ahead of him on this list, they would have similar numbers. No disrespect to Austin Reed at all, but I think just the offense of Western Kentucky kind of leads to that. And look, they're always going to have a high passing volume. But Garrett, I want to spend a little bit of time shouting out Preston Stone because both you and I have written about him for the Transfer Portal CFB. You wrote the SMU preview. I wrote an article highlighting his uh, potential as a breakout candidate in 2023. The kid has all the talent in the world. He's one of the highest rated quarterbacks that SMU has ever signed. 4-star coming out of Texas. He stays home. He has all the options in the world. He could have transferred the last couple of years when he didn't win the job, but he is waiting for his turn and almost beat out Tanner Mordecai last year if it wasn't for an untimely injury at fall camp. So I personally, as noted SMU season ticket holder, I am very, very excited to watch this kid play this year, and I think the whole country is going to know his name by the end of the year.
Yeah, he's extremely talented. He almost beat out Tanner Mordecai if it wasn't for that injury, and I think a lot of people would tell you that they might have wished to have seen what he could have done last year once he was healthy. He did get some spots where he got to play. Pulling up his stats from last year, he did have a couple games where he was in there doing his thing. The Tulsa game being kind of the high watermark for him, where he passed for 219 and a touchdown. But he's a real dual threat option. He has the athleticism to be a dual threat guy. And I think that the brightest days are ahead for this SMU offense, despite losing, a guy like Rashee Rice, where, Rashee Rice was so awesome on the outside. But, I mean, they got some real solid returning receivers. I'm talking guys like Jordan Curley. They brought in Keyshawn Smith from Miami, Jordan Hudson from TCU. So there's some real talented guys to catch the ball from him. And I think that he's going to put up some massive numbers. I'm thinking back to last year with some of those offensive outputs from SMU. I think that that's pretty system driven, similar to, the whole Western Kentucky thing with, Austin Reed being pretty system driven. And he did put up some massive numbers. He threw for almost 500 yards.
5,000 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, he's incredible. But another system driven team that, looking at where the AAC is, they just let a lot of guys walk out the door to the Big 12, where now there's kind of a power vacuum. And I think SMU is in as good a position as anybody else to take over the top of that conference. Now, are they going to have to fight against a Tulane and a UTSA to do it? Yeah, probably. And do they need to figure out how to put the D back in Dallas and play some defense? Yes, that is true. But it's not going to be Preston Stone's fault. And this isn't a defensive list. This is a quarterback's list. I think Preston Stone is going to be very, very good.
Gracious. Yep.